The room is on fire. Everyone is panicking, papers flying, people yelling, nobody knows what to do. And then there's that one person standing still, quiet, eyes scanning the situation. Already 3 steps ahead of everyone else, they don't announce what they're doing. They don't ask for permission, they don't wait for someone to tell them the answer. They just figure it out. You know this person, maybe you work with them. Maybe you're related to them, maybe you are them. The one who goes quiet when everyone else goes loud. The one who disappears for a while and comes back with a solution. The one who never seems to need anybody, and somehow that makes everybody need them. But here's what most people don't understand about these individuals. The way they think is not just a personality quirk. It is a completely different psychological operating system, built differently. Wired differently, running on different fuel than most people around them. And today, we're going to take that system apart and show you exactly how it works. Part 1: The silent processor most people think out loud. When they face a problem, they talk about it, they call a friend. They ask for opinions, they need external input to organize their internal world. People who figure things out alone do the opposite. For them, silence is not emptiness, silence is where the work happens. Psychologists call this introversive problem solving, the tendency to process information internally before externalizing any conclusions. And brain imaging research actually shows something fascinating. When introverted independent thinkers encounter a complex problem, they activate significantly more neural pathways than extroverts facing the same challenge. They are not thinking less, they are thinking more quietly, deeply, and alone. This is why they go quiet when something goes wrong, not because they're shut down. Not because they don't care, but because they have learned through years of experience that their best thinking happens in silence. The problem is everyone around them reads the silence wrong. Why won't you talk to me about this? You never let me in, don't you trust me? But the silence isn't distance. The silence is the process. Part 2: Where this comes from. Nobody becomes a solo thinker by accident. For most people who figure things out alone, this pattern has a specific origin. And it usually starts young. Some of them grew up in environments where asking for help simply wasn't an option. Maybe the adults around them were unavailable, physically, emotionally, or both. Maybe every time they reached out for guidance, the guidance wasn't there. So they learned to look inward. They learned that the most reliable resource they had was their own mind. That their own thinking, slow, careful, independent, was more trustworthy than waiting for someone else to show up. And that lesson, once learned, becomes permanent. Others develop this way through repeated experience of disappointment, asking for help and getting bad advice. Following someone else's lead and ending up lost, trusting a system or a person and watching it fail. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. And after enough experiences of when I relied on someone else, it went wrong, the brain draws a conclusion. Figure it out yourself, it's faster, it's more reliable. And it doesn't leave you vulnerable. This is not distrust in a cynical sense. It's a logical adaptation. Part 3: The 4 traits that set them apart. Let's get specific. Because people who figure things out alone share 4 psychological traits that are remarkably consistent across research. The first trait is radical self-reliance, not arrogance. Not the belief that they're better than everyone, but a deep, bone-level certainty that if something needs to be done, they can find a way to do it. This is what psychologists call internal locus of control. The belief that outcomes in your life are primarily the result of your own actions, rather than luck, other people, or external circumstances. Research consistently shows that people with a strong internal locus of control are more resilient, more persistent in the face of obstacles, and more likely to succeed in long-term goals. They don't wait for conditions to be perfect, they work with what they have. The second trait is high tolerance for uncertainty. Most people are deeply uncomfortable not knowing. The brain's default setting is to seek certainty, to know what happens next, to have a clear map, to avoid the anxiety of the unknown. People who figure things out alone are unusually comfortable sitting in that discomfort. They can hold an unsolved problem in their mind for days, weeks, sometimes months, without needing to resolve it prematurely just to relieve the anxiety. This is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. Because the best solutions don't come from rushing. They come from staying in the question long enough for the real answer to emerge. The third trait is deep observational intelligence, these individuals are watchers. They pay attention to things most people never notice. The detail in the corner of the room, the inconsistency in someone's story, the small pattern that once you see it explains everything. They have trained themselves, often unconsciously, to gather information constantly. Because information is the raw material of independent problem solving. The more you observe, the less you need to ask. The fourth trait is emotional regulation under pressure. When the situation is most chaotic, when everyone else is losing their composure, these individuals tend to become calmer. This is counterintuitive. Most people assume that caring about something means being emotional about it. But for independent thinkers, the high-stakes moment is actually where they focus best. The noise filters out, the options become clear, the path forward presents itself. This is not coldness, it is a highly developed capacity to separate emotional response from functional response. To feel the weight of a situation without being crushed by it. Part 4. The cost of going it alone. Now let's talk about what the research also shows. Because this operating system, as powerful as it is, comes with real costs. The biggest one is isolation, not just physical isolation, psychological isolation. The experience of being surrounded by people who cannot follow you into the way you think. People who figure things out alone often describe a profound loneliness that has nothing to do with being around others. They can be in a room full of people and feel entirely alone, because the conversation on the surface never reaches the depth they're operating at. They stop trying to explain their thinking, they stop trying to bring people along. They conclude quietly that it's faster to just do it themselves, and they're right. In the short term, but in the long term, that habit of doing everything alone, of never letting anyone into the process, creates a kind of solitary confinement of the mind. Brilliant, capable, and deeply privately alone, the second cost is the inability to delegate. Because they trust their own processing so completely, and because they have learned that other people's input often complicates rather than clarifies, independent thinkers struggle to let go of control. They would rather do something themselves correctly than hand it off and watch it be done wrong. This serves them in many situations, but it also caps them. Because no single mind, however sharp, can carry everything. And the people who refuse to delegate eventually become bottlenecks in their own lives. The third cost is that they can appear cold. The emotional regulation, the silence, the self-containment from the outside, it often reads as indifference. As not caring, as being closed off. The people who love independent thinkers often feel like they're pressing against a wall. Not unwelcome, just unable to get in. And the independent thinker, deep inside, often wants nothing more than to be truly known. But doesn't know how to let that happen without feeling exposed in a way that all their training tells them is dangerous. Part 5. The superpower nobody talks about here is something that rarely makes it into the conversation about independent thinkers. Their greatest strength is not the problem solving. It is the quality of their questions. Most people, when they face a challenge, ask, "How do I fix this?" That's a surface question. It assumes the problem is already correctly defined. It rushes toward solution. People who figure things out alone ask a different question first. They ask what is actually happening here, they question the premise. They test the assumption, they look at the situation from an angle nobody else has considered. And very often, they discover that the problem everyone has been trying to solve is not the real problem. That underneath the visible issue, there is a different question entirely. A more important one, this is called first principles thinking. And it is one of the rarest and most valuable cognitive abilities a human being can possess. It's the way Elon Musk approached rocket manufacturing, not asking how do we buy rockets, but what are rockets actually made of and why does it cost this much? It's the way great doctors approach mysterious cases, not accepting the existing diagnosis. But going back to the raw data, independent thinkers do this naturally, not because they were taught to, but because they have spent so much time in their own heads, questioning their own assumptions, that they automatically apply the same rigor to the world around them. Part 6. What they need and will never ask for. If you love or work with someone who figures things out alone, listen carefully. They will not tell you what they need, not because they're punishing you, not because they don't trust you, but because identifying and expressing needs feels dangerously close to vulnerability, and vulnerability is something their whole system is designed to minimize. But here is what they actually need. They need to be understood without having to explain themselves. Not someone who pushes for more communication, more openness, more words. Someone who learns to read them, who notices the small signals, who doesn't need the full explanation to understand what's going on. They need to be trusted with their own process. Don't try to fix the silence. Don't try to pull them out of it. Don't make the space around them smaller with noise and pressure. Give them room and trust that when they come back, they will have something real to offer. They need one person they can actually fall apart with. Because underneath the independence, underneath the self-reliance and the competence and the emotional regulation, there is a person who is tired, who has been carrying their own weight for so long they've forgotten what it feels like to put it down. They don't need many people, they don't even need several people, they need one. One person who sees through the capable exterior to the actual human inside. One person with whom the performance of self-sufficiency is allowed to stop. That person for the independent thinker is everything. Outro here is what I want to leave you with. Figuring things out alone is not a flaw. It is not a symptom, it is not something that needs to be fixed. It is a genuine and remarkable way of being in the world. It produces clarity where others find confusion. It produces solutions where others find only problems. It produces a kind of quiet strength that, in the moments that matter most, everyone is deeply grateful for. But strength and isolation are not the same thing. And the most evolved version of the person who figures things out alone is not the one who needs nobody. It's the one who has learned slowly, imperfectly, with great difficulty, that letting one person in doesn't make them weaker. It makes them whole. If you recognized yourself in this video, share it with someone who might finally understand you a little better. If you recognize someone you love, show it to them. It might be the closest thing to I see you that they've ever received. Subscribe for more psychology content every week. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and every once in a while let someone in.